Hello, this is a guide on the gradebook assignment where you have to make a Microsoft Excel or other spreadsheet with grades for fictional students and several items and a formula to calculate their final grade. Then you also need to add a bar line chart. This assignment will be easy for many of you, but then for others who haven't used Excel as much, it could be a little bit challenging. The instructions are pretty thorough. They go over each item that you have to include and how to do it. But usually when I teach this course in a mixed modality, I demonstrate it in class, and I can't do that online unless I make a video. So first I'll look at a demo file that I have available for download in the modules. Let me make sure this is the right one. If you go to week 5, it will appear there. And you can use that as a guide. Don't copy it. If you were to just submit that file, you would not get any points because you have to make it on your own. So here that file is under week 5. This is the summer A 2018 semester, so it's actually this one. This is from spring. And anyway, what you see here is a gradebook that has a little bit more than what is required for this assignment. You don't need the ID column, and you don't have to have the averages and percentages, but generally this is the format. You make a header row in row 1, make that bold. You can make it a bigger font size like I did here, and then you put in numbers, and on final grade you'll see that that's actually a formula, and it's copied down to all these. And then the chart is just made with Excel, and you see here that we selected like this. I'm holding down Control to select a non-contiguous area. This is a non-contiguous area. Cells are B1 to B12 plus cells D1 to G12. And then when you go over to data, let me insert, not data. Under insert, you have recommended charts. You can click that one up here and then just use the first option. So we will do this from the start so you get the whole process. Here you see the yellow line shows the final grades for each student. And we have an issue where I think I deleted something, so then I would just copy to there and restore Bob Berger's grade. And so you see in each cell when you have the formula, and then when you copy that to another cell, the formula automatically updates to include that row number. So this is Nancy Drew, row number 3, and so that automatically changed. D2 to F2 became D3 to F3. There's a way to use a $ symbol to prevent that from happening, but for our purposes, we want the formula to update when it's copied between rows. I know in the instructions I mentioned having a header. I don't really care too much about the header. It's only shown when you go down here and hit page layout. So then you'd have to hit OK if you're using freeze panes, and then your header would be up here. But I don't actually check that usually, so I'm more grading row 1 when I grade you for the header. And so what I did here with freeze panes is an optional additional item. You would go to view and do freeze top row, and then what would happen is if you scroll down as your gradebook gets longer, you would be able to see the first row at all times. Another tool is the sorting function, and that would be accomplished by using the sort and filter option under the home tab, and then you would do filter. That's under editing on the home tab in Microsoft Excel 2016. I believe it's there in 2010 and 2013 as well. And so then you could sort people by first name if you wanted. You could sort them by last name. And then if you add an ID column like I did here, you'd be able to restore the original sort by sorting the ID column from smallest to largest, because if you were to sort by, say, first or last name, then you wouldn't be able to get back to where it was before unless you had this ID column. Or you could undo or save a separate copy of the workbook, but it's easier to probably have an ID column. Okay, so now we'll jump into making this from scratch. So let's open a new Excel file. When you open Excel, the first thing you might want to do, it's not required, is to go down here and change the title. So you can maybe make that your grades, and that's for the sheet in the workbook. You only need one sheet in the workbook. You can have a second one if you'd like, for like putting the chart on a separate sheet, but it's not required. We can just drag the chart to an empty area of this workbook at the end. The next thing to do is to label your headings. So we make the decision that each student will have its own row, and so just for familiarity with the vernacular of Excel, going across is a row, so these are rows, and going up and down is columns. These are columns. And then columns are labeled with letters, and rows are labeled with numbers. So you could have an option where each student has a column and then the assignments have rows, but more often you would want to have each student have a row and the assignments have columns. Unless it's some unusual scenario where you have a lot of assignments and not very many students. So here, you can put first and last name together if you want, or you can do them separately, and it's up to you what order you want to do them in. Now let me go back and see what I put in here. It looks like I've instructed you to do last name and then first name, but either way would work. So I'll put just last first. This is in row 1, column A, column B, and then for columns C through F, we will do just what I have here. So we'll call this quiz 1, quiz 2, project, final grade. Next, let's make this bold. So we'll just select that row and make it bold up here under home in the font area. Click bold, and then maybe make the font a little bit bigger. Next thing we want to do is adjust the width of each column to make it wider as needed. So I'm going to just do that by eyeballing it. That one doesn't need to be that wide. Quiz 2, project, and final grade. And now we need to come up with some phony names. So that could be, whatever you want to do. We'll go with Smith. Just make up some common names here. I have a brain freeze here. Game of Thrones references in there. One mistake that some students make is they stop at number 10, but you actually have to go to row 11, because remember, row number 1 is your header. So if you just had these, that would only be 9 students, and you need 10 for this assignment. And then we'll put in some first names. And they're an artist named Philip Phillips. Yeah, there we go. Okay, put him in there. And then now we have the names finished. For these items here, one thing you could do is select the 3 columns like I'm doing here, and then change those to a number. And that way they'll be formatted as a number with 2 decimal places. Then take the final grade column and select that column, the whole column, and go up to here where it says number again under the home tab, and change that to a percentage. Okay, and then that'll appear as a percentage, which is like multiplying by 100 and adding a percentage sign after it. And then one thing you always want to do is to save it. Actually, I should have done this earlier. I always forget to do that when I'm doing a demonstration. So save your file before you do a lot of work, and then keep saving it in case your computer turns off unexpectedly. You never know what could happen. Okay. And then for here, we need some grades, and we also need to think about how many points are in each assignment. So let's say these are, and I can add that to the heading. Let's say this is 25 each, 25 and 50 on the project. And of course, if you were doing this for an actual class, you probably would not forget. You would not forget how many points each component of the grade is. And then we need some phony numbers. So these can be whatever you want, you know, just put in whatever. They can be fractional. You can have some fun with it and pretend that some students did better than others. If you were to do extra credit, there would be no problem with that. There would be no warning either, so this could be like 26. And so keep doing that. Whoa. Then we can take these and make them look a little better by formatting them as centered. But then I might do row 1 as left justified, and that way if I were to add a filter later, the drop-down box would not include the text in row 1. Like let's say I were to add a filter, then that looks pretty nice because you have this drop-down box and it doesn't block any of this text. Purely aesthetic. Okay, so for final project, let's give them some scores. Okay. So here with final grade, I don't want you to just add these up and do it manually. Do not do it manually because a key part of this assignment is using automated methods. So one way to do this quickly is to go to the formulas tab of Excel and then do AutoSum. And so when I clicked AutoSum just now, which is under function library toward the upper left, I had the F2 cell selected. So that was with F2 selected, and then you see what happened is Excel automatically detected that I wanted to sum cell C2 through E2, and it knows like the A and B2 are names, not numbers, so it didn't include those. So that's good. I can hit enter now. And because I formatted this as a percentage, I need to divide by the total number of possible points. So here, 25 plus 25 plus 50 equals 100. So I want to divide by 100. And then that's the grade for Stephanie Smith is 89%. Now, if you were to use the average formula, that would be fine if all of the grade components were equal. So here, if I'm using the average formula here, it's going to be inaccurate because I have the project being worth more than the quizzes. But let's say that they were all equal. In that case, average would be okay. But here, cannot use average. Sometimes you'll have them all be equal. If you had 3 items, that would be a bit awkward because it'd be 33 and a third each. But if you had like 4 items of 25 each, then it would be fine to use an average formula instead of a sum formula. Once I have F2, a formula in F2, there's a couple ways that I can just copy this to every other student without having to manually do it. One way is looking at a tiny green box in the bottom right corner of cell F2 when cell F2 is selected. If I put my mouse there, it turns into a small black plus sign. And now if I left click, holding the left button of my mouse down, I can drag the mouse while I'm holding the left button down all the way down to cell F11 and then release, and all of these will automatically fill in. And you'll see, looking at each formula, that it automatically changes the row number to be that row number. So this is for Alan's grades, this is for Paul's grades, etc. Another way to do it, if you don't want to do the little tiny box, is to take this and copy it, and then you'll be copying the formula. You can also use a keyboard shortcut, which is Control-C. Hold down Control and press C on Windows. On Mac, I think it's Command-C. And then select the other ones. cells F3 through F11 and then paste those there. If you just do paste with the keyboard shortcut Control V, it'll work. Or if you're doing a right click, there's about 6 different options. Notice if you did values, you would not get the right answers because it would just take the raw number for Stephanie Smith. So you don't want to use values. For paste, that one goes to the default option, which is formula. So that would do the same as formula, and that is the appropriate one to use. Transpose is not useful in this scenario, and neither of these other options are. So the only one to use would be the default or formula, which both do the same thing. They copy the formula and adjust the row number. So now we have all of the final grades, and they're calculated using formulae. We can take this and make it bold if we want the whole column. We could even highlight it yellow. There's other things you could do with formula to give a letter grade in a different column, but not required. Those are not required for this assignment. The next thing that we want to do is make a chart. So a quick way to do that is just to select everything and do recommended charts. And let's see what happens. So this one doesn't look like I expected, so let me close this. It looks like I did something that made a new sheet. I don't need this new sheet, and it didn't make the chart I was anticipating. Maybe if I get rid of the yellow highlight, it'll work better. Sometimes it can be iffy based on what Excel thinks that you need. So it looks like these first 4 recommended options I'm seeing here aren't useful, but clustered column is, and that's the one that would usually appear first for me. So if you don't have clustered column in your recommended list, it is possible to go to all charts, and then you would look under one of the options. It looks like clustered column. If you go over it by hovering on each option, it will show a preview of it. I like the clustered column one that's shown here because it actually puts a line for the final grade. It knows that this column is formatted as a percentage, and so it doesn't just display a bar for each final grade, because the bar would be microscopic. It would be between 0 and 1 because it's a percentage. So here we see that each quiz and the project is a different color, and then the final grade is indicated by a yellow line. And so you would take this and you would title it like Richard's grades or something. You don't have to do anything else at this point. I will show a couple different ways to do this. Here you see I actually selected the first and last names, but Excel decided to just put the first names on the x-axis label. This is the x-axis going left and right. The y-axis is going up and down. And on the left here, we see point values. And on the right, we see percentage values, which is relevant only to the yellow line. And then the point values are relevant to the blue, orange, and gray bars. And then the legend is automatically shown here. If you wanted to, you could select a non-contiguous area. Like let's say we only wanted last names. I can select cells A1 through A11, hold down the control button on the keyboard, and while I'm doing that, left click in cell C1, hold the left button down and drag the mouse to cell F11 and release. And now if I make a bar chart like that, it will show the last names on the x-axis. So here we see down here below the bars, we have their last names instead of first names. You can use either one. Pretend that this is for your class in the future and that you are doing whatever would be best for you to keep track of your students' grades. Another option would be here to change the maximum. Now, as you remember, I did give Dexter Morgan extra credit on his final project of 51. So if I was to put 50 here, it wouldn't look right for him. So I want to consider extra credit and include the maximum as 51. Now it looks like here it automatically made the minimum -9. There is no negative value, so I need to make that 0. This is optional, not required for this assignment, but just extra stuff you can do. Then you might click over here for your final grade percentage, and you would want to make that a maximum of 1. Note that a percentage is multiplying a number by 100, so that's why it's 1 here, not 100 here. and then we see the percentage updated, and you can increase that to like 1.05 if you want to accommodate students that got more than 100% due to extra credit. It's fine if you want to have your bar chart just have, say, final grades on it. I will accept that. Let's just say I wanted last names and final grades only. You could make a chart like that and submit this assignment to me, and that would be acceptable as well. It's probably better to put less stuff on the chart than more, and sometimes having too much on there can be distracting. I don't know why when you make a video and the options that you always see before change and they don't have the chart that you want. But for here, I'm showing an example of using a bar chart for the final grade. Let's see if I can get one. There we go. And then I might want to change this to be vertical bars, but horizontal bars could be fine too. And if I wanted, I could change the scale here and final grade, call it final grade. And you can put 2 charts, so it's fine to submit with 2 charts. There's no extra credit for that, but you can if you'd like. Another thing to watch out for, when you're making the chart, make sure to include row 1, because often students every semester will make this mistake. They'll just select everything but row 1, and when they do that, what happens is it doesn't fill in the legend, that is, or also known as a key. It doesn't fill in that for you. So if you were to do that, you would get a chart that looks like this. Notice down here, below the names, it says Series 1, Series 2. That is not appropriate because it doesn't tell us what each of these things are. So by selecting row 1 as well, you automatically get Excel to populate the key with the names of each assignment. I know that some people might be colorblind, so the colors might not be useful, but if you're able to see the color, the blue bar corresponds with the leftmost one. So each of these are ordered by left to right, and then the line is the last one. Obviously here you can't compare the blue bars to the gray bars because the blue bars are for an assignment worth half as much as the gray bars, but you can compare, say, the gray bars between students and the blue bars between students. If you're going to do a line chart, this is where it really becomes important not to put all the lines on there. If you were to just take all of this information and put it on a line chart, it would basically be completely useless. So let's say I go in here and I pick a line chart. Here we see that for a line chart, Excel did not automatically make the final grade on a multiplied by 100 basis because it's a percentage. So the final grade is just a flat line because it only goes from 0 to 1. And then these lines here, they don't tell you much because they overlap, and also it doesn't tell you what you'd expect from a line chart, which is maybe progress over time or something, because these are different students. So if you are going to use a line chart, it might be good just to do final grade by itself, or not do the line chart at all, because it sort of implies that you're looking at someone over time, but you're actually looking at multiple different people. I would accept a line chart like this for full credit, but it doesn't tell you much because it looks like this is one person and their grade's going up and down over time, when in fact these are different people and they're not related to each other really. So I encourage you to use bar charts like we have pictured at the bottom here. After you're done, save it. Of course, here I've used a different title, but for your title of the file, I prefer you to use the format of, what do I put here? Your name, grades. And so that would be your last name, maybe. And then save it. And then when you go on here to submit your assignment, you would just upload that file. Now be careful, sometimes when you have the file open, that you might accidentally upload a temporary file, and so that would be useless to me, and I would have to ask you to redo it. I don't see the temporary file now, but if you have show hidden files enabled, then sometimes you'll see a temporary file that starts with a symbol that looks like this. And so don't submit the temporary file, submit this one. So let's pretend I'm a test student now and I'm going over to assignments, and I'm going to turn in my grade book. I'll use Control F because it's quicker to find it. And then I would just go to Submit Assignment. I can take this URL from here, paste it there to go to that folder, scroll down to there, and then like submit it to the instructor. And so that's all you have to do for your gradebook assignment. When you become a teacher, often you'll be using the grades tool, which I can't show because I would be showing the students in this course their grades. Well, I can show it in the test student view, but here you don't see your grade book, you just see your grades. But this is a learning management system called Canvas by Instructor. And so Canvas has actually become quite common in school districts, like Orange County, Florida uses Canvas. Florida Virtual School uses Canvas. And using such a system, you would be able to automatically compute grades using the tools in here. Each item has a number of points, and then it adds them up for you. But you might still have to use a grade book in some situations. And it's a good skill to have because Excel becomes useful in many different settings. All right, that'll do it. Have a good evening or afternoon.